Big day here on Locked On Lions. An old buddy from the network is going to join us, and some numbers from Vegas on Jared Goff. Let's do this on Locked On Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for joining us and being with us here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network. Matt Derry with you on a Wednesday, June the 29th into Thursday, June 30th. We're getting into July, and that means training camp down in Allen Park. Thanks for making us your first listen and joining us here on the show today. Trevor Sikkema is going to join us, former host of the Locked On NFL podcast, Locked On Bucks. Trevor has been just about everywhere, the Draft Network, and now Trevor's a part of Pro Football Focus. He is an analyst at PFF, and he's going to join us to talk about the Lions, his impressions of the offseason, and more coming up on the program here today. Also on the show today, our friends at betonline.ag are out with quarterback future odds, passing yards, touchdowns for over-unders, and also interceptions. What are Jared Goff's numbers, and what would you, if you had to put some shekels down, to quote Dan Leach, hey, DT, I'm here. If you had to put down some money on an over or an under for Jared Goff's numbers, we're going to tell you what those numbers are coming up momentarily on the show as well. Thanks for making us your first listen, joining us via Twitter possibly. If you find the podcast on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter. Also, we post the podcast each and every day on the Matt Derry Facebook fan page. And, of course, we are on YouTube. Subscribe, tell your friends, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, whatever you do. And subscribe to the show on YouTube so you get the show video-wise each and every day right here on Locked On Lions. And, of course, we also, you can get the show audio-wise wherever you get your podcasts on any platform and at lockedonlions.com. All right, let's start with this. I said this before, and yes, I know the afro's flowing in the beard tomorrow. Haircut and a trimmed beard tomorrow. So that's a big preview right there. Yes, odds for the upcoming season from our friends at betonline.ag. Jared Goff, passing yards for the season, passing touchdowns for the season, and interceptions. Over-unders. Now, over-under for passing yards in the regular season for Jared Goff, the starting quarterback for your Detroit Lions, sits at 3,700 and a half passing yards. Just to give you a little perspective, Jameis Winston's at 4,000. Joe Burrow is at 4,400 and a half. And who's a good comparison maybe for Jared Goff? Kirk Cousins, let's say. Kirk Cousins is at 4,100 and a half passing yards. So for Jared Goff, because he is a bit of a dink and dunk quarterback, check down Charlie to an extent, the passing yards are low. I would probably go over if Jamison Williams plays 3 months of the season. I would go over 3,700 and a half if we get a healthy Jamison Williams. All right, let's move on to touchdowns. Touchdown Bears. Jared Goff for touchdowns in the regular season, over-under is 22 and a half. In comparison, Jameis Winston, 28 and a half. I'm just using those guys. Joe Burrow, 32 and a half. Kirk Cousins, 31 and a half. So Vegas has, again, Jared Goff's passing touchdowns very low, thinking with this Lions offensive line, with this DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, that the Lions maybe would be running more in. So for touchdowns, 22 and a half, again, I would probably go over on that. I think that is a little low. Okay. BetOnline.ag, Jared Goff, over-under for the season. Interceptions. Anybody want to put a guess out there? Interceptions. Jared Goff interceptions is placed at 11 and a half. 11.5 interceptions. Now, here's why that's a little low. Jared Goff doesn't throw a ton of interceptions, but Jared Goff fumbles the ball every week, right? This is almost like if they did fumbles for Jared Goff, you'd probably put it at like 7 or 8. 11.5 interceptions. Compare contrast with Jameis Winston of the Saints, 13. Joe Burrow, 12.5. And Kirk Cousins, 10. So they would have Cousins lower than Jared Goff, who comes in at 11.5. I probably would go over because I do believe this offense under Ben Johnson now and Dan Campbell will be taking more chances than they did a year ago where everything was very, very safe. So again, I would go over 3,700.5 passing yards for the season, over 22.5 passing touchdowns for the season, and I'd go over interceptions at 11.5 because I think Goff is going to throw more than 11.5 interceptions. But those are some interesting numbers from betonline.ag that go with Jared Goff's statistics for this season. Trevor Sikkema is going to join us coming up next from Pro Football Focus. Let's talk first about our friends at rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models of cars, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Plus, prices are going up. Not at rockauto.com. Prices are reliably low. Don't go to the chain store. Go to rockauto.com and have this stuff delivered right to your door. Save time and save money when you use Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store. From Rock Auto, it's $216. You can't beat that with a stick. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-for-yourselfers for over 20 years. They got everything you need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and their prices are reliably low. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. And hey, Matt Derry here. We just talked about betonline.ag, but what about all your betting needs and sports information? You go to betonline.net, your number one source for everything you need. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, scores, news, including everything from Major League Baseball. You want to recap of today's big Tigers win over the Giants? You can get it at betonline.net. It is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Heck, AEW is tonight down in Detroit. If you want to bet on some wrestling, I'm sure they could do it at betonline.net. They got MMA, boxing, and golf as well. Both tours, I believe. Soon there'll be like 10 tours. BetOnline, go to the website, betonline.net. BetOnline, it is, always will be, where the game starts. Great to be joined today here on Locked On Lions. You see him on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. It's our buddy Trevor Sikkema, a Locked On alum, and now with a Pro Football Focus and PFF. Trev, great to see you.
Matt, always good to be back on with the Locked On family. So I appreciate you having me on to talk about an exciting team, an exciting Lions team. I'm excited to get to chat with you, man.
How about this? First of all, you've made the switch over to PFF. How much more analytical are you now?
I mean, I'll say this. The tools that PFF has are unbelievable. And, if anybody out there listening, they don't have a subscription to PFF, I'll just plug it right now. The tools and the information and the everything that they have over there it feels second to none. Like if you want to be able to cover your team or other teams or just the league in general, shoot, even things like fantasy football, the draft, all that kinds of stuff. I sound like a salesman, but it's true. I mean, the numbers and the ways that you can look at different things and situations and how they break down all sorts of stats into exactly what you want it to be able to tell you is really cool. And so I mean, I guess I am a little bit more analytical with it, but just it's a really cool place to have a lot of database for information and get to know teams pretty well.
No question about it. And we love the folks at PFF for sure. And All right, when you look at things from a Lions offseason perspective, Trevor, there is a lot of optimism for the first time in a long time here in Detroit. Do you think it's warranted?
I think it should be. I mean, you look at their draft, and that's, of course, the most recent thing of what we've been able to see. You nail Aiden Hutchinson, you get him at number 2 overall, which makes a ton of sense. You make a big jump for the player who I thought was wide receiver 1 in this past draft with Jamison Williams, and it's okay, right? Because people talk about this all the time. They go, all right, well, he's coming off a major injury. Well, you look at the recovery and the timeline of it. He's already back on the field. He's jogging. He's doing things really well. And so you'd like to see that. He's progressing from that injury. But more importantly, Lions don't need him this second, even though it's a really exciting time for the Lions. They are just now kind of, you would believe, getting into the swing of that winning window. So they've got the amount of time. He might be on the PUP list to start things off, but I think they'd be totally okay with them because when they get him on the field, he's going to be a dynamic weapon for him. And that's great. Combining it with what we got to see from Amon-Ra St. Brown at the end of last season. You add a guy like DJ Chark as well, who I thought was a really talented player, both at LSU and Jacksonville, just underutilized because of the lack of talent at the quarterback position in both options. And so, look, you've got playmakers there. You've obviously got DeAndre Swift as well. You've got Jamal Williams as the running backs. Jared Goff's still the quarterback. Okay, maybe people don't think that he is the long-term answer at quarterback, but he's serviceable. He's going to get you to where you want to go. And I think even more importantly than all those other things, Matt, they've got a damn good offensive line now in Detroit. I was doing an exercise with Connor Rogers at Bleacher Report over on my podcast, NFL Stock Exchange, and we were drafting the best position units in the NFL. And for offensive line, I drafted the Cleveland Browns, but I gave a shout out to the Lions because when you look at the investment that they have made on so many different positions, whether it's high picks, high priority, good amount of draft capital, they have got a very talented offensive line. And it's not at the top of the NFL right now, but there's certainly reason to believe that it's talented. It's only getting better. So shoot, even just from an offensive perspective, I think that this team has done really, really well for itself.
Let me go back to something that you said earlier. You talked about Jared Goff. It's funny. I made a comment on the show on Monday that can we stop with, oh, the Seahawks would go after Goff or this team would go after Goff. Like Goff's going to be here. And then yesterday, Matt Miller did his 2023 mock and had Will Levis going to the Lions. I'm like this big Levis slappy. But when you look at Goff long term, Trev, they have not in 2 years under Brad Holmes drafted a quarterback, at least even a developmental guy. They haven't brought anybody in outside of Tim Boyle and David Blau, which certainly are not starter answers. But how do you really, as you do a deep dive into Goff and this Lions offense, what do you see?
Yeah, and I think that it's all setting up for them to have the flexibility to pick the quarterback that they want, right? They didn't want to force a quarterback selection last year. You look at the year before and you had a lot of quarterbacks to choose from, but they weren't in the spot. They weren't ready for that. They weren't ready to maximize what was a rookie contract winning window, which is the most valuable place that any NFL franchise can be in. And look, Goff isn't the worst quarterback in the world. He made a Super Bowl with Sean McVay. I know that Detroit fans have probably heard that ad nauseum, but I'm not a massive believer that Goff is going to be their franchise saver. I think that he's going to be serviceable. There you go, for them, but I don't think that he's going to be this franchise savior for the Detroit Lions. I think that they're going to be good this year. And I think what's really important is, some fans will look at things from a true bottom line perspective of, Lions fans would say, we don't even want Jared Goff to be good. We want him to be terrible because we want the best draft pick possible. Because we want to pick the best quarterback possible, right. Which I understand why you would want that. But, I covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a beat reporter down in Tampa for three seasons. And I'll tell you, there really is something to creating a winning culture, creating a winning mindset. And when you just constantly lose, Matt, you start to believe you're losers. And I think that the timing is pretty damn good right now for the Detroit Lions because this year I think they're going to be better than they have been in the last handful of years. They're going to start convincing themselves that, hey, we are a good football team. We're a good offensive line. We got the right pieces. This defense is coming along, right? They're going to start believing. And then hopefully, best case scenario, they get to slingshot that with a Will Levis, a Tyler Van Dyke, a Tanner McKee. Shoot, you love to get your chance at a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud or something like that. But even if not, I think there's going to be a good amount of quarterbacks to choose from in this upcoming draft class. And so at that point, the team is on the up. The rest of the team is on the up. It's not like the Justin Fields situation where he got drafted to a terrible team that's not really making the most out of his talents. And instead, I think it's, you look at the timing, and even with Jared Goff, they're going to play well enough this year where the team really starts to believe. I think they start to believe in the coaching staff, the front office, the rest of the roster. Then you get that quarterback. That's what's truly going to be able to maximize that winning window for them. So that's honestly, to me, what is so exciting about this franchise, because even beyond this year, I believe they're putting themselves in a really good spot to contend, and not just contend in like a fool's gold way. Sustained success throughout the next, you hope, 2, 3, 4 years as well.
Trevor Sikkema with us from Pro Football Focus at PFF, longtime hoster on the Locked On Network, and has done a fantastic job as well. And check out his podcast as he talked about. All right, you mentioned the offense and certainly Jamison Williams. Where are you with TJ Hockenson and some of this money being thrown around with tight ends this offseason? Where do you think he'll end? He's going to end up probably staying in Detroit, but will he become the highest paid tight end based on what Njoku got in Cleveland?
Man, on the surface level, I would say no. Like, I think he's I really do. I think he's a great player. I liked it when he was coming out of Iowa. He gave you a lot of all-around ability, and certainly when you have a reliable guy who you can put on the field on all 3 downs, you absolutely love that. So I think they're certainly going to pay him. I don't know the tight end contract numbers off the top of my head. I wouldn't expect for him to be a market-setting guy. I really wouldn't, even if he has what might be his best year upcoming, which you certainly hope for that to be the case. I don't know. It'd be somewhere within the realm of a top 7, top 5 tight end contract if he plays his best ball this upcoming year, because like I said, they're not going to want to lose him. Hopefully you get to this point where you are drafting what is then your young franchise quarterback, and you want all these pieces to be around them. And we've heard this phrase many times before: a good tight end, a reliable tight end, can be a young quarterback's best friend. And we've seen that so many times, time and time again. So I think that certainly is going to work into TJ Hawkinson's favor as well. But we'll see. I mean, a massive year coming up for him, certainly when it comes to contract and how he is going to be viewed as what kind of an option on this team. Is he really that focal point? Are they going to start to really run the offense through him, or is it going to be a complementary piece? So I think all of that is going to go into the final numbers of his money, but big year for him, no doubt about it.
Let's get into the defense a little bit with Trevor, and certainly the coaching. We'll do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Trevor Sikkema with us from Pro Football Focus as we talk a little bit of Lions football here on this, a Wednesday in the offseason. All right, Trev, we talked a lot about the offense. You mentioned Aiden Hutchinson kind of in the open to kind of head the defense a little bit. Aaron Glenn did a nice job last year, but how big of a jump do you think they take this year with Hutchinson, Pascal, and some of the guys they picked up?
I really like the young guys. I really do. I think that Pascal was a very underrated prospect throughout this entire draft class. He missed a decent chunk of time when he was at Kentucky. And I don't think people realize the reason why he did. It's kind of said illness on it, but he was overcoming cancer treatment. So, I mean, that was something that he had to absolutely had to overcome. And for him to only be able to only miss the time that he did, I think it's incredible for him to come back on the field, play as well as he did, really continue to improve his stock and be picked where he was in this past draft. And so I really do think that guy is only going to get better. He is such a great versatile defensive lineman. I think he's got the strength and the body type to be able to play a lot of different alignments for you. He can play as a true 5-tech defensive end. You can even kick him inside a little bit to 4-eye stuff, maybe even at 3-tech if you want to get creative on passing downs. But I think he's going to be huge. Hutchinson, certainly, I know you guys have talked about him plenty, and with good reason, right? He was the most productive edge rusher in all of college football last year. He is a Michigan guy staying in the state, and so that's huge. You get a little hometown hero, if you will. And I just think that he's an absolute workhorse, and he's the kind of guy who, hopefully production-wise as well, you already know that he's going to set the tone for the defense, even outside the lines, in the locker room, on the practice field, whether it's team bonding things, whatever it is. This guy is so highly competitive, and football is so in his blood. That's going to help set the identity of the defense, just like you want to do on the offensive side of the ball with how dynamic they're getting. You want to be able to do the same on the defensive side of the football with those high effort, high work ethic kind of players. And I think that is such an X factor that Hutchinson is going to bring to the team as a young leader right away. I actually, when I look at the secondary, I like the selection of Kirby Joseph. I really did. I liked Amani Oruwariye when he was coming out of Penn State. I thought that he wasn't getting a fair shot until these past couple of years. He's really been able to prove himself, which I've been really happy about. And then the big X factor, I know you probably talked about it a ton, is Jeff Okudah. And Okudah, from what I was told, was playing really well before he had his major injury. But you go back to that first year in the NFL, and I want people to realize this. Playing corner as a rookie in the NFL, especially as a starter, is second only to playing quarterback as a rookie starter in the NFL. That is the toughest position, I think, without a doubt, outside of quarterback, to be able to play well in. Yeah. And you look at Okudah, you look at what he came from. He was extremely talented at Ohio State, but Matt, he played so confident. And I think he played so confident because the rest of that Ohio State defense around him was also so talented. And, the Big Ten's not the best conference in college football. I'm not saying it's the worst. But you look at Ohio State.
You got to be careful around here.
I know. But I think Big Ten fans would all agree with this. Ohio State has been more talented than its competition almost every single week over the last 4 or 5 years. So I think that Okudah plays with that kind of confidence because he's on that kind of team when he's at Ohio State. He came into the NFL and you could tell trying to learn a lot of different things. He was trying to get the confidence in himself and his teammates. And anytime you are playing with a lack of confidence at the cornerback position, you're going to struggle because it's those split second things that'll get you in trouble at corner. That's what makes it so hard to really succeed right away. So again, I was told that going into his sophomore year, he in the NFL was looking really good. He was looking a lot better than he was. He was looking more confident. And of course you have the injury. Now it's an Achilles injury, and that's tough. That's a tough injury to come back from. A lot of your explosiveness, your changing direction, everything comes from those ligaments below the calf or below the knee, if you will. So I think that's going to be an adjustment for him. But this dude was the number 3 overall pick in the draft for a reason. He is a damn good player when he is fully healthy. You hope you get to see some of that, whether it's an outside corner, whether it's nickel, whatever it is for him. You're hoping that this next year is just a fully healthy year for him. He takes a step in the right direction, and they get that top cornerback asset back because that'll be a huge slingshot for them if they can.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it, Trev. I mentioned this yesterday. Kayvon Thibodeau kind of said, listen, if I can have a sack a game, that would be pretty good, or 5 to 10 tackles. I don't think he was predicting anything. And certainly Kayvon went 3 picks after Hutchinson, and in years to come, we'll say, oh my gosh, the Lions really messed this up, or the Lions did the right thing. With Walker, Tibbs, and certainly Aiden at number 2 to the Lions, what do you realistically see as a sack number for this group? Because obviously 3 of the top 5 picks are guys that are going to have to disrupt the quarterback.
Yeah, Trayvon's very interesting, right? Because that was the whole topic of what he was going to be in the NFL during the pre-draft process, because people were like, oh, okay, you're talking about him as the number 1 overall pick. The guy didn't get sacks. The guy was never even asked to get sacks. It's not even like he's practiced this a lot. So incredibly talented player, freak of an athlete, just an unbelievable player in so many different ways, Trayvon Walker is. But it's going to take time for him to understand exactly what it takes to be a sack master, to be a double-digit sack guy. So I probably think that, look, Trayvon's going to get on the field right away in Jacksonville. 1, because they don't really have any other options there that would oppose him. I know they have Josh Allen, but Josh Allen's going to be on the field anyways. I don't think that K'Lavon Chaisson, is somebody who's really going to contend for a lot of those Trayvon Walker reps. So he's going to be on the field right away. I think that anywhere from, I'll say 6 is the number that I really think of for sacks when I think of Trayvon Walker. Now, when we think of Aiden Hutchinson, I don't think that this guy's going to come off the field very much unless he happens to get hurt, which we certainly hope that's not the case. I would hope that anywhere between like 8 and 11 sacks is what I'm looking for from Aiden Hutchinson because of how much he is simply going to play. I think that he's going to play a ton, and volume alone will get him those opportunities. So I think that would be a good year for him. And then Kayvon Thibodeau, probably within that same range. I had Kayvon as my top edge rusher last year, but I had Hutchinson right behind him. So these dudes I have very similar expectations for, probably somewhere around that 8-9 sack number for Kayvon, depending on how many reps he's getting, if he's getting the similar number of volume with Hutchinson, which I'm not so sure it's going to be the exact same. I think Hutchinson's still going to get more volume there, but similar stuff. I think anywhere from like 7 to 9 sacks for Kayvon Thibodeau, anywhere from 8 to 11 for Hutchinson, and probably right around 6, I would say, for Trayvon Walker.
All right, final thing, Dan Campbell, year 2, Brad Holmes, year 2. They won 3 games a year ago with a tie. Over under in Vegas, our friends at Bet Online still at 6.5 right now. The schedule's easier, the roster's better. What do you say? Over under on that?
What did you say? 6.5? Is that what it was?
Yes, 6.5.
I'd say over. I think that they would go kind of right over. I think sevens are really that's the sweet spot for me. I think this team's going to be a lot better. And I was down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, so I got to kind of see how that coaching staff was operating, how they were interacting with the players, how they were inspiring all those guys. And man, it's an awesome coaching staff. It's an easy group of guys to root for. And I know that the media is on that as well, but just seeing it firsthand was really cool. It's easy to see how they can buy in. And I think that alone, having that kind of faith, look, you get out of the gate in the schedule and you win a handful of games, you get in a little bit of a run. You got some belief and you got some hope, you got some faith, you got some fire in you. And I think that that's something that can sustain them, especially with a guy like Campbell being the head guy. And I like a lot of the coordinators. You mentioned Glenn as well as a lot of the assistant coach guys. I think are fantastic player coaches too. So look, I have full faith in that coaching staff there in Detroit right now. They're one of my favorites in the NFL. I wish them nothing but the best. And shoot, man, I've really loved what Brad Holmes has been able to do over the last couple of years too. So it seems like they've got some good continuity, getting good football players in the building, making things happen over the last 2 off seasons. So this team's gotten better on paper, no doubt about it. Now they just got to go out and do it, and I think they can. So I'll go slightly over with that win total of 6.5.
Trev, great catching up with you, my friend, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Of course, Matt. Anytime, man.
There he is, Trevor Sikkema with us, now at Pro Football Focus at PFF. You can follow him on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey, TRE. That'll do it for a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions. We are back again tomorrow.